Hi, and welcome to a new segment on our channel. My name is Sam from Verse.com, and today we are comparing probably the best smartphone cameras of the year 2020. It is a comparison between Oppo's Find X2 Pro, Huawei's Mate 40 Pro, and Apple's iPhone 12 Pro Max camera system. We are going to compare the systems in terms of day and night capability and photo and video quality. Stay tuned and find out who came up with the best camera system. If you'd like to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let's start straight away with our review. Let the facts speak. Before we dive into the specs of the camera systems, but you just want to see the direct comparisons, feel free to skip this part. The Mate 40 Pro uses a 3-rear camera system, an ultra-wide with 20 megapixel, a wide with 50 megapixel and a telephoto camera with 12 megapixel. You can find the ultra-wide 30 megapixel front camera in the upper left corner of the screen and a pillbox cutout right next to the 3D depth vision camera. It records 4K videos at a maximum of 60 frames. It also has image stabilization for video. So far, so good. Let's find out what the Oppo works with. The Find X2 Pro had 3 main cameras, a 48 megapixel wide angle, a 48 megapixel ultra wide angle and a 13 megapixel telephoto camera. The front camera's resolution is 32 megapixel and it is built into the hole punch notch in the upper left corner of the screen. The Oppo Find X2 Pro records 4K videos at a maximum of 60 frames. And of course, it has image stabilization for video. Great, let's take a closer look at Apple's camera system. The iPhone 12 Pro Max has a triple rear camera system. It features a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a 12 megapixel wide and a 12 megapixel telephoto camera. The front's camera resolution is also 12 megapixel. The iPhone 12 Pro Max records 4K videos at a maximum of 60 frames per second. And of course it has image stabilization for video. The 12 Pro Max also has a sensor shift optical image stabilization for its wide angle camera. Okay, let's start with our first comparison. Here are 2 images of each camera. Take a second and choose which image you think looks best. The first one is the Huawei, the second one the iPhone, and the third the Oppo. The first picture was taken with the ultra-wide camera. And as you can see, the iPhone's image is the widest of all 3, but also the darkest. The Huawei's image is the brightest, but tends to have a reddish touch when you look closer in the clouds. Oppo's image is the sharpest of all 3 and has the most contrast to it, but we think it is a little bit too much of everything. It seems unnatural. The next image was taken with the wide camera. Huawei's again tend to have a reddish tone to it, and the reds have a yellowish touch. And again, the Oppo has lots of contrast, and it seems as if there is a filter on it that makes the image look sharp. The iPhone has the most natural colors and is the overall most natural looking image. Let's take a look at another sample. First, the ultra-wide. Again, the Huawei tend to have a red tone to it at first sight. The iPhone is the most accurate and the Oppo has a greenish-yellowish tone. The wide image makes it even more obvious, as you can see. Now let's take a look at the zoom capability, by zooming in 5 times. Again, red tones in the Huawei image. Now the iPhone has a bluish tone and the Oppo seems the most natural and has the most details. Okay, let's find out how the image looks when we max out the zoom capability of all 3 camera systems. Since Apple only has a maximum of a 12-fold digital zoom, we cropped in post to make it more comparable. All 3 look totally pixelated. But the Oppo takes the win in this one, because even though all the way zoomed in, it has still recognizable details. Huawei comes in second and the iPhone lost. Here's the third and last example of the ultra-wide daytime comparison. The iPhone with the most details and the widest lens. The wide camera gives the image of the Huawei a reddish tone, and the Oppo has a yellowish greenish tone. The iPhone again with the most natural colors. Zoomed in 2 times you can see that the Huawei is the softest of all 3 cameras, and the iPhone the sharpest. We gotta say that not every situation is the same, but overall the iPhone came in with the best performance in our daytime comparison. Let's move on to the dynamic range comparison. Before we do get into dynamic range, we mix up the order of the devices and here are 2 samples again for you to decide which image or video looks the best to you. And here is the conclusion. Despite the fact that the Huawei again has a reddish tone. It has the most details in the sky, but loses out details in the foreground. The sky in Oppo's image is totally blown out, but the foreground has a lot of contrast. The iPhone is somehow in between the 2. It is the brightest of all 3. Let's see how a shift of perspective looks like. It did not change that much. We think that the iPhone again, as it is in between the 2, has the best result. By changing the location, it shows that Oppo takes the lead because it has the most detailed in the foreground. But still, it also has a greenish touch again. The iPhone has the most accurate colors, but has the darkest foreground. With the Huawei, it seems that it is not able to handle high contrast at all. A total different situation appears when it comes to taking videos. The Oppo suddenly gets really noisy, and the Huawei takes the lead. The iPhone is in between. The blacks on the iPhone looks kinda washed out. In terms of the dynamic range, it is a battle between the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the Oppo Find X2 Pro. The Mate 40 Pro only managed to get the best results when it came to video. So in this case, we couldn't pick an overall winner. Next up, the portrait feature. Here are again two samples of each camera system, one from the front and one from the rear camera. Which one do you think looks the best? And again, here's the result. The iPhone again comes across with the most natural color rendering. The Huawei, same as the Oppo, have lots of contrast which leads to losing details. And again, the Mate has a reddish color touch, and the Find X2 a greenish touch. All three camera systems handle the depth vision great. Let's see how the front camera in portrait mode looks like. Let's start with the iPhone. The background of the iPhone picture looks way too blurred out, which tends to look unnatural. And the color has somehow a green touch. The Mate 40 Pros produced a solid picture, but the overall best portrait picture is the one from Oppo's front camera, even though it messed up the dynamic range. There are no details at all in the clouds, but it has the most natural color rendering. Overall, the iPhone's portrait mode produced the most satisfying images. Enough of the daytime pictures, let's take a look how the camera systems work in a dark environment. We mix it up again. I wonder if you can tell which phone produced which photo or video. And here is the conclusion. Let's go through all the cameras built in. The ultra-wide picture on the iPhone had the most noise in it. The Mate 40 Pro had the most contrast and is the sharpest. The Oppo has the least contrast and seems washed out. It even looks like it has somewhat like a glow effect when switched to the wide camera. To get the most of the dark situation, the Mate 40 Pro uses an exposure time of up to 8 seconds. And the iPhone and the Oppo use around 3 seconds. The next picture again was taken with the ultra-wide camera. And as you can see, the Oppo comes across as the sharpest. All three were standing on the mini tripod on the ground. The next one was taken handheld from the wide camera. The 8 seconds exposure time on the Mate 40 Pro lets the picture come out as a blurry mess. The iPhone is really dark, and even though sharper as the Mate, it is not as sharp as the Oppo. Which is not great, but the best one in this comparison. Let's switch to the front camera to take a selfie. The Mate 40 is incredibly soft. It couldn't handle the dark environment at all. The iPhone was a bit better, and Oppo, even though it hasn't got the best color rendering, produced the sharpest image. In the next picture we went from a dark place to a little more lit up place to test out the portrait mode. I don't know what the Mate 40 Pro did, but the result is a total mess. I look like a Simpson character. The iPhone had the most details, but not in a good way. It seems like I suddenly aged, despite that the color rendering was once again the best in this one. The image produced by the Find X2 Pro was pretty dark and not the sharpest, but came across as the most accurate. Each smartphone wasn't really good when it came to taking videos at nighttime. But the Huawei was the worst. The iPhone skin tones were way off. The Oppo was a little bit overexposed but had the best results. The nighttime results from the Huawei were really disappointing. The Oppo and the iPhone were definitely better than the Mate, but overall the Oppo had the best results. Next up is a video stabilization. We started with the ultra-wide camera, but we gotta say that the Oppo is not able to shoot video with the ultra-wide camera. That is why we shot this one with the wide camera, and the other ones were recording on the ultra-wide camera. As you can see, the Huawei messed up big time, both in ultra-wide and wide. The Huawei is, in terms of video stabilization, the worst of all three. The Find X2 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro Max, on the other hand, did a great job. Let's hear how they handle recording sound. This is the sound of the Huawei Mate 40 Pro indoors from around 1 meter to 1 meter 50 distance. This is the sound of the iPhone 12 Pro Max indoors from around 1 meter to 1 meter 50 distance. This is the sound of the Oppo Find X2 Pro indoors from around 1 meter to 1 meter 50 distance. This is the front camera sound from the Huawei Mate 40 Pro from around 1 meter indoors. This is the front camera sound from the iPhone 12 Pro Max indoors from around 1 meter. This is the front camera sound from the Oppo Find X2 Pro from around 1 meters indoors. In terms of recording sound, the Huawei had the best result. It had the least amount of echo. The Oppo Find X2 Pro had the worst sound. It had the most amount of echo.
Conclusion.
Overall, we gotta say there's no phone which stood out from the others and was able to do everything better. Each phone had their pros and cons, but by bringing everything in consideration, the iPhone had the overall most satisfying camera system. It handled everything somehow good. Not perfect, but good. What do you think? What is in your opinion the best camera system? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your opinion. If you liked our video, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Take care and see you soon.